Hello, horror lovers. Welcome to the chilling world of Mr. Haunt. Please subscribe. It's our biggest motivation to keep bringing you spine-tingling stories. Let us know in the comments which city you're listening from. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to hit the like button. Now, let's get into the stories. I never believed in Bigfoot, not really. I grew up seeing blurry photos, fake documentaries, and people swearing they saw something tall in the trees. I always assumed it was misidentification, shadows, bears standing upright, fear filling in the gaps. That belief stayed with me until the night. The forest itself seemed to stand up and walk. This happened during a solo camping trip in the Olympic Peninsula. I had taken a week off work and wanted complete isolation. No cell service, no other campers, no noise. Just trees, rain, and time to think. I picked a remote trail that ended near an old logging road that had been abandoned decades ago. The map showed no nearby campsites, which was exactly what I wanted. The first 2 days were uneventful. Quiet hikes, light rain, the constant smell of wet earth and pine needles. I set up my tent near a small creek, surrounded by massive trees that blocked out most of the sky. The forest felt ancient, heavy, not hostile, but watchful in a way that made me feel small. The third evening, things began to change. It started with the silence. Anyone who has spent time in deep forest knows the difference between normal quiet and wrong quiet. This was wrong quiet. No birds, no insects. Even the creek seemed muffled, like the sound was being absorbed before it could travel. I was cooking dinner when I felt it, that unmistakable sensation of being watched, not casually observed, but studied. I slowly turned in a circle, scanning the tree line. Everything looked normal. Tall trunks, ferns, shadows deep enough to hide anything. That night, I heard footsteps. Not close, far off, heavy. Each step deliberate, as if whatever was moving did not care if it was heard. The ground vibrated faintly with each impact. I lay still in my tent, listening. The steps circled wide at first, then slowly drew closer. I told myself it was an elk, maybe a bear. Then I heard something that erased that comfort completely. Breathing, deep, rhythmic, intelligent. It sounded like lungs filling slowly, then emptying with control. Not panicked, not animalistic. Calm, confident. The breathing stopped directly outside my tent. I froze, every muscle locked. I could see the outline of something massive blocking the faint moonlight through the tent fabric. It stood there for a long time, long enough for fear to turn into numbness. Then it moved. I heard fingers press into the ground, thick fingers. The sound of nails, or something like nails, dragging through damp soil. The shape leaned closer, and I caught a smell so strong it made my eyes water. Rotting vegetation, wet fur, something wild and old. It exhaled slowly, then it stepped away. I did not sleep at all that night. At first light, I packed my gear with shaking hands. I told myself I was being paranoid, that fear had exaggerated everything. I planned to hike out immediately, but before leaving, I noticed something near the creek. Footprints. They were enormous, longer than my forearm. Deep impressions pressed into the mud as if made by something incredibly heavy. They were not shaped like a bear's paw. They were human-like. 5 toes, a clear arch, wide-heeled. And they walked in a straight line. I followed them for only a few steps before I felt that watching sensation again. Stronger now, closer. I stood up slowly and backed away, heart pounding. The forest answered. A low sound rolled through the trees. Not a roar, not a growl. Something deeper, resonant. It vibrated in my chest more than my ears. The sound carried intelligence. Territory. Warning, branches. cracked somewhere uphill. Then another response echoed from far away. And another. I realized then that I was not dealing with one. I grabbed my pack and started hiking fast, not running. Running makes you pray. I kept my pace steady, forcing myself to breathe normally even as panic screamed in my head. The sounds followed. Heavy footsteps paralleling my path, sometimes close, sometimes far, always matching my speed, never rushing, never falling behind. Trees shook occasionally as if something brushed against them without effort. At one point, I smelled that same rot again, stronger than before. I glanced to my left and saw movement. A shape stood between the trees. It was taller than any man I had ever seen, covered in dark matted hair. Its shoulders were massive, sloping forward with power. Its arms hung long and thick, hands nearly reaching its knees. Its face was partially obscured by shadow, but I saw eyes, not glowing, focused, calculating. It did not bare its teeth, did not charge. It simply watched me, head slightly tilted, as if curious. Then it stepped back into the trees and vanished without sound. I reached the old logging road just before sunset. The moment I stepped into the open space, the forest behind me came alive again. Birds chirped, insects buzzed, the creek noise returned in full. It was as if I had crossed a boundary. I didn't look back. When I reached my car, I found something pressed into the dust on the hood, a single massive handprint, not clawed, not deformed. 5 thick fingers, human-like, but far too large to belong to any human who has ever lived. I drove away shaking, refusing to slow down until I reached a town with lights and noise and people. I never reported it, never posted pictures, never told anyone except you, because I know what people say. They say Bigfoot is a myth, but I know what watched me walk through its forest, and I know this for certain. It let me leave. I was part of a 4-person hiking group when it happened. We were experienced, not thrill seekers, not amateurs. 2 of us were former forestry workers. 1 was a wildlife photographer. We knew the land. We knew the difference between animal behavior and something that does not fit. This took place in Northern California, near a stretch of forest that had once been logged heavily and then abandoned. Old service roads cut through thick growth, and the trees there grew twisted and tall, fighting for light. The locals warned us not to camp on the ridge, but they never explained why. They just said the place was wrong at night. We camped there anyway. The first sign something was off came just before dusk. We heard wood knocking, 3 sharp strikes in a row, hollow and loud, like someone hitting a tree with a log. Then silence. Our photographer, Ben, perked up immediately. He smiled and said it was probably hikers signaling to each other. I disagreed. The sound came from deep in the trees, nowhere near a trail. A few minutes later, we heard it again. Same rhythm, same spacing. Then it answered itself. From the opposite side of the ridge came another set of knocks. 3 again, perfectly timed. We all stopped talking. That was when the smell drifted in. Strong, musky, like wet dog, mixed with mold and old leaves. It clung to the back of my throat. I watched everyone else notice it too. Faces wrinkled, noses pinched as night fell. The forest grew restless. We heard heavy movement downhill, branches snapping, leaves crushing under immense weight. Whatever it was did not move like a deer or bear. There was no frantic crashing, just steady progress. Confident, then the tree beating started. A massive thud echoed through the ridge as something struck a trunk with enough force to make the bark shudder. Then another tree was hit farther away. Then another. It sounded like a warning, or a conversation. Ben grabbed his camera and started recording. hands shaking despite his excitement. He whispered, "This is it. This is what I came for." I told him to put the camera away. He didn't listen. The smell intensified. The air felt heavy, like pressure building before a storm. We heard breathing behind us, close enough that I could tell it came from more than one source. I turned slowly. Between the trees stood two shapes. They were taller than the surrounding brush and wider than any human. Their outlines were barely visible, but their mass was undeniable. One shifted its weight, and I heard the ground compress under its foot. The second one beat a nearby tree with its open palm. The impact made my chest vibrate. Ben lifted his camera. The moment the lens pointed toward them, the forest exploded with sound. Wood knocks echoed from all directions. Heavy footsteps closed in. Branches cracked overhead. A roar ripped through the air, deep and furious, layered with others answering it from afar. Ben screamed. One of the shapes stepped forward into a patch of moonlight. I saw its face clearly then. Broad nose, heavy brow, dark intelligent eyes set deep beneath thick hair. Its mouth opened slightly, revealing teeth that were not animal fangs but something closer to ours, designed for chewing, for endurance. It did not charge. It stared directly into the camera. Then it reached down and grabbed a fallen log like it weighed nothing. It snapped the wood in half with a single movement and slammed it against a tree. The message was unmistakable. Leave. We ran. We abandoned food, gear, everything. We tore down the ridge without looking back, crashing through undergrowth, guided only by fear and headlamps bouncing wildly. The sounds followed us until we reached the old service road. When we finally stopped, gasping for air, Ben realized his camera was gone. He went silent, completely withdrawn. He never spoke about what he saw through that lens. He quit photography entirely. Weeks later, forestry workers found our campsite. They said the trees around it were shattered, bark stripped away in long vertical gouges, far above a man's reach. Deep footprints pressed into the soil in a circle around where our tents had been. No animal tracks mixed with them, just those. The locals were not surprised. One old man at a diner told me quietly, "You camped where they raise their young." I asked him why no one warns hikers properly. He shook his head. Because some people do not listen until the forest speaks to them itself. I have never returned to that ridge, but sometimes, when the night is still and the wind moves just right, I swear I hear distant knocking. 3 strikes, paused, answered from somewhere far away. Not random, not natural, communication. I went on that trip with my cousin Aaron and 2 of his co-workers. It was supposed to be a quick weekend hike in the Rockies, nothing extreme. We had all camped before. We stayed on marked trails, carried bear spray, made noise when we walked. We did everything right. None of that mattered. The first day was perfect. Clear skies, cold air, pine trees stretching endlessly into the distance. We hiked up to a high clearing that overlooked a long valley and set camp before sunset. The view was incredible. Miles of forest rolling away like waves. It felt untouched, too untouched. As night fell, the temperature dropped fast. We built a fire and cooked dinner, laughing and telling stories. Then Aaron stopped mid-sentence. "Do you hear that?" We all listened. A low sound drifted up from the valley. It wasn't wind. It wasn't an animal call. It sounded like something humming or murmuring to itself. Deep, continuous, almost thoughtful. It faded after a minute. We tried to ignore it. Around midnight, something stepped into the edge of our firelight. At first, I thought it was a bear. Then it stood upright. It was massive, easily 8 feet tall. Broad shoulders hunched forward, thick with muscle. Dark hair covered its body in uneven patches, longer along the arms and back. Its head was slightly cone-shaped, sloping back in a way that didn't look human. The firelight flickered across its face. The eyes caught the light and reflected it back, not glowing, reflective, alert. No one moved. The thing sniffed the air slowly, head lifting and turning as if tasting our scent. I could hear its breathing clearly, slow and controlled. Aaron whispered, "Do not run." One of his co-workers dropped a cup. The sound hit the ground with a hollow clatter. The creature reacted instantly. It slapped the ground with one hand. The impact shook the earth and sent sparks flying from the fire. Then it took a step forward. I could see the size of its feet clearly then, long, wide, thick toes gripping the dirt. It let out a low rumbling sound that rolled through the clearing and down into the valley. The hum we heard earlier answered from somewhere far below. Then the thing turned and walked back into the darkness. We stayed frozen until the fire burned low at dawn. We packed up without speaking and started down the mountain. We stuck close together. Every snapped twig made us flinch. About an hour into the hike, we heard it again, footsteps dot behind us, matching our pace. Whenever we slowed, it slowed. Whenever we stopped, it stopped. It never rushed, never closed the distance. It simply followed. At one point, Aaron whispered, "It is hurting us." That was when we realized the trail we were on curved sharply near a narrow ravine. The footsteps grew heavier. Branches snapped closer now. We could smell it again. That musky wet scent, stronger than before. Then something stepped onto the trail. Ahead of us, another one. This one was smaller but still enormous. It stood sideways, blocking the path, arms hanging loose, head tilted as if curious. We were trapped. The one behind us let out a low grunt. The sound vibrated in my spine. The one in front took a step closer. Aaron raised his arm slowly and spoke, voice shaking but steady. "We are leaving." The creature stared at him. Then it reached out and snapped a thick tree branch in half like it was nothing. We backed away slowly, carefully. We took a different path downhill, scrambling through brush and rocks. The creatures stayed where they were, watching us go. When we finally reached the trailhead, the forest behind us went quiet again. Aaron's coworker broke down crying. He said he felt like we were never in danger, like we were being guided, controlled. He was right. Weeks later, we compared notes. All of us had the same dream afterward. A tall shape standing at the edge of the trees, watching us leave. Head tilted, not angry, not curious, satisfied. Satisfied. I still hike. I still camp. But I never go where the trails fade into nothing, and I never ignore the feeling. That tells me I am not alone, because sometimes the mountain decides where you are allowed to walk and where you are not. I had been a park maintenance worker for nearly 10 years when this happened. I had cleared fallen trees, repaired trails, and dealt with everything from lost hikers to aggressive wildlife. I knew the sounds of the forest. I knew what belonged and what did not. This did not belong. The campsite was deep in the back country, far from main trails, and only accessible by an old ranger road. It had been closed to the public for years because of repeated complaints. Campers reported strange noises at night, equipment going missing, and a feeling of being watched. No official cause was ever found. I was sent out alone to inspect it. The drive there felt longer than usual. The trees seemed to press in tighter the farther I went. The air grew colder, even though it was midsummer. When I arrived, the campsite looked untouched. Fire pits, old log benches, a rusted metal food locker. The silence was immediate and overwhelming. I started my inspection, making notes, checking for damage or animal signs. That was when I noticed the footprints. They circled the campsite, large, bare, human-like, pressed deep into the soil. Some overlapped older impressions, as if whatever made them had paced the area repeatedly over many nights. I felt that familiar prickle at the back of my neck. Then the knocking started. One heavy impact echoed from deep in the trees. Then another, closer. Then a third, from the opposite side of the clearing. I froze. Something moved behind the tree line. The bushes shook, but nothing emerged. The knocking continued, slow and deliberate, like someone testing the strength of the forest itself. I reached for my radio. Static. Then a low sound rolled through the clearing. A deep vocalization that resonated in my chest more than my ears. It was not a call for attention. It was a declaration. A presence stepped forward. It stood just beyond the edge of the clearing. Tall, broad, covered in dark hair, matted with leaves and debris. Its shoulders were hunched forward, powerful. Its arms hung long, hands massive and relaxed. It looked at me, not aggressively, not curiously, assessing. I slowly raised my hands and backed toward my truck. The creature took a single step forward. The ground trembled under its weight. Then another sound answered from deeper in the forest, and another. I realized I was standing in the center of something important. I reached my truck and opened the door without turning my back. The creature watched the entire time. It did not advance further. As I drove away, I glanced in the mirror. The clearing was empty again. That campsite was officially closed a week later. Fencing went up. Warning signs were posted. Not about wildlife, about unstable terrain. They still send crews near that area sometimes. No one camps there anymore, but occasionally, hikers report hearing deep knocking sounds echoing through the forest at night. The reports always mention the same thing. No matter how loud the forest gets, that campsite never goes quiet.